What's up, everybody? Welcome to Buds with Buds, episode 2. I am joined today by my good friend Philip Trickey, who is a writer and a producer for Crowdpurr.com, my go-to source for all virtual and in-person trivia hosting software. Philip, good to see you today. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Ryan, how the hell are you, man? It's good to see you.
I'm doing well. I'm wearing a hat. I almost never wear a hat, but I have this one with my logo on it. And I know that you are a man of many hats, both figuratively and literally. And you have a hat on today.
Yes.
Tell us what's on your hat.
Well, this is Crowdpurr. Like you said, this is the audience engagement platform that you use for your trivia games.
Mhm.
We do trivia games, bingo games, social walls, surveys. You can do all manner of stuff. And yeah, I've been working here for about 3 years. 3 years, actually. Monday was my 3-year anniversary.
Look at that. 3-year anniversary. Did you get taken out to lunch? Did you get like a small cookie cake? Was there any kind of special perk that day?
There were no perks that day. 90% of my work week is spent working from home.
Uh-huh.
And so I was by myself
You got
in
to have
my
your
home
own
office.
perks. When you're working remote at home, you got to light your own candles on your own single candle
My
cupcake kind of a
my
situation.
biggest perk that day was taking the dog for a walk and picking my daughter up from school. So,
There you go. I
but
love it. I love it.
those are everyday perks that I really love.
Hey, it's good to have everyday perks. I like that. Very good. Philip, you work at Crowdpurr. You've been there about 3 years. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in the world of Crowdpurr. I know that the company is based out of Ohio, and are you an Ohio native?
I am not an Ohio native. If we're talking natives, I guess you could say I'm an Iowa native, as that's where I was born. But
Mhm.
I grew up in Illinois, Missouri, New Mexico, Utah, and then settled in Seattle when I was in my late 20s. So I've been kind of all over. This is my first place that I've ever lived east of the Mississippi.
Oh, very good.
I've never really been I guess Ohio is technically East Coast. We're East
Yeah.
Coastish. We're on Eastern time, so we're East Coast.
Yeah.
But this is the furthest east I've ever lived. Moved here um, in the middle of the pandemic,
Okay.
relocated like a lot of people
Sure.
due to unforeseen circumstances in my life, unforeseen circumstances in my daughter's mother's life, and we all just decided who she is. She is a native of Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, gotcha.
So we moved here to be closer to family. My family lives in central Illinois,
Mhm.
so I moved closer to be to them. But we didn't want to start over somewhere that we didn't know anybody, didn't have a foundation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we came here height of the pandemic, which is shortly before Ross relocated the company here from Los Angeles. He was in Los Angeles for the first, let's say, 7, 8 years of the company.
That's right.
And then he also had some unforeseen circumstances that brought him back here because he's a native as well.
Hmm.
And I just, my fortune here was based purely on luck. I
Yeah.
have a 25-year history of working in the bar and restaurant industry.
Gotcha.
I started bartending to work my way through college, and like many people, ended up making more money
Sure.
bartending than I would trying to get in, entry level into the career world.
Yep.
And so I just kept doing that. And then when we moved to Seattle, when I was in my late 20s, sort of at the height of the classic cocktail boom, when Mad Men was airing, people wanted old fashions and the old drinks that came back into style. I was sort of lucky to be at the forefront of that and to be in the classic cocktail world, and worked my way up and was managing a successful bar program when the pandemic hit and shut everything down.
Yep.
And when restaurants reopened, I went back to working in a restaurant for a little while, and just it was, the whole industry had changed overnight, understandably so, and I just didn't recognize it anymore. And then when we moved, I wanted to get out of that industry, but 25 years in one single industry makes it difficult to convince other people that you can do other things.
Sure.
And I was just lucky enough that my partner noticed a LinkedIn job posting for it was under, what was it? It was under copywriter,
Okay.
to try to broaden it out. But The post was for my official job title is trivia manager.
Love it.
But I prefer to think of myself as more of a writer slash editor. Jokingly call myself the editor in chief. But yeah, my partner came across this job posting and I took a shot, sent in a resume with, zero career experience in the field.
Yeah.
Aside from a few, I had written copy for some websites freelance to get a portfolio going, but that was very few and far between. So it was difficult to get that going. And Ross responded to my impassioned cover letter and brought me in for an interview, and the rest is history. Like, honestly, like I said, it is 99% luck that I just even happened on. Like, just there are so many factors that had to play karmically and cosmically to get Ross here to Ohio, to get me to Ohio, to get just all of these things.
Sure.
And I don't, obviously COVID was a terrible thing, but sometimes I think that COVID was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
I was able to move here, find a career that I absolutely love. This is my most favorite job that I've ever had in my whole life.
And you're really good at it. That's such
I appreciate that.
Yeah. That's such a really, such a cool build to that story, and how you said karma brought you to that place. I'm in the exact same boat, moving from LA, living there for 10 years to Tennessee, where I'm at now. Happiest I ever been, healthiest I ever been, most prosperous I ever been. And all weirdly in part due to the pandemic and how much money we were able to save up by not going out and working constantly remote,
Absolutely.
And so, when people do talk about the strife of those couple of years, I think there are some very specific folks like you and I who can thank maybe not the pandemic itself, but just the circumstances surrounding the pandemic and what it kind of led to for us. So,
I'm not going to put COVID at the top of my thank you list, but
yeah, exactly.
It's there.
You said something that I think is very valuable there. To summarize kind of what you said about getting that job is it's not so much about the resume. It's about your experience and your excitement for a job posting that you thought sounded fun. You said you talked about your cover letter. Do you remember some of the things that were in that cover letter that maybe led to Ross from Crowdpurr hiring you for the job you have?
Well, I specifically mentioned that, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And like many people of my generation, I grew up inside a video store.
Yeah.
And
I'm sitting in a makeshift video store. I don't know if you could tell. That's what I was kind of going for with this background.
I see the Roadhouse poster. This is
eventually we want to take these down and put up more like wood paneling so it looks a little bit more vintage, and then put the posters back on the wood paneling. But this is cool. I'm also I think you and I are on the same age. We like a lot of the same stuff. But so you included some of that in your cover letter?
Well, I was lucky enough when I was 19 to start managing a video store, like a local independent video store in my hometown in Utah.
What was it called?
It's called Video Express. We were a local chain. I think there were like 7 or 8 in the greater Wasatch Basin. Nothing in Salt Lake, but just all north. So towns like Ogden, Logan, Roy, towns that nobody knows. But
it's really, it's very, very interesting that I'm going to tell you right now. My wife was born in Logan, Utah.
Oh, very cool.
I've been, of all the places you can go in Utah, I've been to Logan
all the places. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
So it's a small world. I learned that more and more every day.
Yeah.
I think as the older we get, we realize just how small it is.
Exactly.
So I was managing the store, and my bright idea as a new 19-year-old manager who obviously knows everything in the whole world.
Yeah.
For new hires, my go-to was to give them a sheet of trivia.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, who directed The Godfather?
Yeah.
What year did Jaws come out? These sorts of things that, at the time I felt these are things that a video store employee needs to know.
Sure. Was this the 90s, 2000s? When was this?
So I was 19. So this would be 1996 that this was happening.
Gotcha.
Late 90s. This is pre-DVD. Mm-hmm. We're still in the heyday of the video store.
Sure.
We're 2 years removed from the lionization of Quentin Tarantino as the video store employee who could turn to make movies,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so as 19, I thought I could do that. I could work in a video store, and then eventually I'll make Pulp Fiction. Still waiting on that one, but it's going to happen someday.
Oh, yeah.
So I, did this trivia and realized quickly that people in Ogden, Utah might not be as passionate about movies as me. And so I was getting like very low success rate on these trivia games.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in my cover letter, I opened with that, I've done this for 20 plus years. No one's ever paid me to do it, but I've done it for a long time. And, 20 years behind a bar, I have had conversations about literally any topic that you could think of. My rule was always no politics, no religion.
Yeah.
Those were the two topics that I personally didn't want to discuss. You want to talk to your friends about it? Knock yourselves out.
Sure.
Don't drag me into it.
Yeah.
But literally anything else. And, so I had to be, in order to have a conversation with my regulars who are interested in all manner of subjects, I had to be well-versed in movies, music, TV, sports, books, literally all the popular culture under the sun. Mm-hmm. And so it's the 20 plus years in the restaurant industry were training for this.
Yeah.
And like you said, like you are and myself, we're the first generation that we grew up with cable. We're the first cable generation.
Yeah.
So we were just inundated with this popular culture our whole lives.
Yep.
And for good or for bad, whatever, and it's only gotten more and more populated with things.
Sure.
So that was my impassioned plea in my cover letter.
Yeah.
Basically, give me a shot. And he did. So
that's so cool. And you've been at Crowdpurr for 3 years. And for people that don't maybe use Crowdpurr, Crowdpurr is a web-based system that people can play by scanning a QR code or going to a website and typing in an address like crowd.live/buds, which I use quite a bit, to host things like a social media wall where people can post pictures and text to like a big screen, maybe at like a big gala event or something like that. They can answer trivia questions with quizzes you set up. They can mark off bingo cards with grids that you set up with pictures and animated GIFs and words and things like that. And there's different modes and types of questions and all that kind of stuff. And that's sort of a quick summary of what Crowdpurr is. That's where you work. And you said sort of like the head trivia writer.
I'm the trivia manager. Yeah.
Trivia manager. And there's this huge, one of the best parts about Crowdpurr, I think, is this massive, massive library of over, I think, 1,500 different 15-question quizzes. So any topic you can think of, like 80s movies, or even more specifically, 80s martial arts movies. I know those are both in there. There's 15-question quizzes on both those topics, and that's just two of over 1,500. So tell us a little bit about developing that library, building on that library, and what your kind of week-to-week routine is when you log into the office. How many things do you have to write per week, and how are you generating that content?
Sure. I'm gonna toot my own horn here right now and say that this past Monday, on my 3-year anniversary, we published our 2000th database game.
I was under by 500 quizzes, 2,000 quizzes. Holy cow!
Yeah, I was waiting to correct you, but I wanted to get that in there. I think we're at 2003, 2004. It's not wildly over, but we did hit 2,000 over the weekend.
That's quite the accomplishment.
The library was hovering around 500 or 600, I think, when I started. So it has ramped up quite a bit. My day to day is I come in. A typical Monday morning would be to publish the games that I edited the previous week. So I myself write and edit 5 trivia games that are all mine. And then we have a couple freelancers who submit a couple games a week, and I edit those. Okay. And it's a lot of, our system is unique in that we have, in addition to the question and the different formats, we can do multiple choice. There's fill in the blank. We have a thing called drag and drop where you put things in order. So there's different styles of questions that you can make. We also have, there's video capabilities. You can add YouTube videos, pictures, all sorts of things like that. And then the question notes, which are supplemental material. I always love when you are, learning a new thing, which is what we do. We're teaching people new things. These are facts, figures, trivia. I know that it gets a knock, but
it is educational. And I was just actually reclassifying my podcast as it's under leisure and hobbies. Mm-hmm. And you can select a second category. And I'm like, oh, there's a whole education section. I'm like, I guess it is education. Right. It's facts. It's things that you can recite to other people that are true. Yeah. So I'm like, maybe that'll get some new listeners. So that's my new secondary category.
Our question notes area on the website, I try to make it so you're learning supplemental information. So you're not just learning one thing per question. You're going to learn two things. You're going to learn, whatever, who starred in Forrest Gump. But then in the question notes, I will add a fun fact about Tom Hanks.
Or maybe somebody else that was supposed to play Forrest Gump or something.
Yeah, it's something so that you're like, hey, you know this? Now you know this. And so I love to have, I don't want it to just be a rote recitation of the question.
And your question notes, I will say, make me look smarter than I am every day.
Well, thank you.
Sometimes
thank you very much.
And you have the ability to show the question note. So you can say like, everyone can read it along on the screen or on their screen as you're reciting it to them, which I do a lot. But I also sometimes will glance at the question note, sort of memorize that sentence for a second, and then recite it like I'm coming up with it, like I knew that on my own, when in fact you have done that research and hard work for me. So
I'm happy to help. I appreciate that. I love hearing that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. When I record our podcast, which is Trivia Night, search for Crowdpurr wherever podcasts are hosted. Mm-hmm. When I do our podcast, I use the question notes as sort of my in-between banter. Yeah. And they're very helpful to me.
Oh, sure.
For that, because I don't do a lot of live hosting like you do. I like to say that my the podcast intro that I use is live on tape.
Yeah.
Which I stole from the Larry Sanders Show, starring Gary Shanley.
Sure.
But I don't host a lot of live shows.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the same vibe of a live show on the podcast, even though it's very controlled and edited by me.
Yeah.
I like to keep that same vibe and that live energy, and the crowd or the question notes really help with that. So it's really great to hear that they help you in an actual live situation.
Oh yeah, all the time. If I'm doing a corporate virtual show like I did just a couple days ago, I have a second screen monitor off to the side if you're watching me on this video on YouTube right now. And so all of my Crowdpurr stuff is over there, and my Crowdpurr dashboard is on my main computer. So controlling everything from there, glancing over to the right, reading the questions, using hotkeys to show the correct answers and the answer results and things like that. Hitting N to show the notes and, reciting those, or like I said, sometimes glancing at them. But very, very helpful, makes everything professional, makes it sound like I know way more about these topics than I actually do. And there are a lot of times I'm hosting trivia that I have no idea, and even more importantly, no interest in the topics. And that brings me to my next question for you. When you have to write, 5 games a week, are you constantly battling a topic that maybe someone at Crowdpurr wants you to do, or someone's requested or something like that, and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to do a quiz on Super Bowl stuff again with Super Bowl coming up. I'm not a sports guy in any way. I think you and I have talked about wrestling a little bit, maybe on Instagram over the years. I'm a big wrestling guy. That's about the only sports related thing that I get excited about or follow or could talk about for hours. And people, especially in the South where I live, go like, hey, did you see the whatever game? I used to politely try and go, oh yeah, no, but tell me about it. And now I just go, no, I don't watch sports. I watch wrestling. Do you want to talk about that? And then they usually go no, and then I get out of the conversation. So
you and Ross should talk about wrestling, because he's also very well.
Yes, maybe that's who I was thinking of from Crowdpurr that I talked to about wrestling. And not you.
I know the basics. If you take a look at our recently published WWE Legends game.
Used it on Sunday night. It was great.
Awesome. I know the Hogans and the Andre the Giants and those guys, but I couldn't pick any current wrestlers out of a lineup.
Gotcha. I'm the same way with like if you said give me five current NFL players, I would be like
Sure.
Patrick Mahomes. Like that's all
Right.
I you know what I mean?
I could talk to you about baseball until we're both blue in the face, but
Ah, okay, that's your thing,
a
baseball. I
lot
love
of
it.
people, a similar thing. Like most people don't want to talk about baseball. It still has this terrible this reputation as being boring, and
Yeah.
just like any other sport that if you don't understand it, you might not be into it.
Yeah.
I get that, man. That's
I,
what makes everything great. There's enough for everybody out there.
I will slip in real quick that I hosted the WWE Legends category. It was round 2 of 6 smartphone rounds I was doing with Crowdpurr on Sunday night or Monday night at a place called Tiebreakers. It's a cool
Uh-huh.
Dave and Buster's style arcade, but way higher quality in Johnson City, Tennessee, where I live. And we do a last Monday of the month show there from 7 to 9. And this guy sat down. He had missed round 1, but he sat down right next to me where I was set up at the bar. And he goes, "Did I miss the WWE Legends round?" Because I text all the players or email them all the categories, like the regulars, because I
Uh-huh.
collect their emails and phone numbers week to week. And then I create this huge list, and that's who I blast all the categories out to get people to come back each and every week and say, "Hey, here's the categories we're doing. Here's some prizes we're giving away," things
Yeah.
like that. And so when he got he's like, "I got the text about WDB and I had to be here." So that one topic got that guy to come out, with his
That's
girlfriend and
that's
spend
awesome.
money on drinks and food at a place that is going
Yeah.
to be there. So it's always cool when you see that sequence happening.
Hmm.
And that sequence is much harder to do without Crowdpurr. So I
Oh,
constantly,
that's
man, every time one of those things pops up, I try and text Ross about how much I love Crowdpurr. And I've been doing that for going on 6 years now because
yeah.
I remember someone told me during the very beginning of the pandemic, they said, "I saw you're doing like, PowerPoint slides and stuff on Facebook Live." They're like, "You should check out this guy doing this thing." And it was some other host, I think from Chicago, hosting with, he was doing a live stream with Crowdpurr and you could scan the QR code and play along. So I did that. I'm like, oh, this is like way better. This is like the thing I need to be doing
Yeah.
for this era that we're going into. And I have not looked back or even tried to find anything else ever since
That's
because
that's
knock
so
on
wonderful
wood,
to hear.
Crowdpurr's like my be all end all solution to all the things that I do,
Yeah.
whether they're in person events or they're virtual events. So
I about
constantly,
six
constantly bowing to the throne of Ross and Crowdpurr.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
good to hear. And Ross is going to love to hear that.
Hmm.
About 6 months ago, I ventured out. Um, I don't go out that often. I a sober person, so I don't drink. So bars are not my typical hangout place. But I went. Oh, geez.
There you
Sorry,
go. That's
got to
okay.
move around in the office building. The lights just went out.
Yeah.
Um,
Sober
went to a
bartender is a great setup
well,
to just the main
and
character.
that was towards the end of my bartending career. Made
Gotcha.
that decision.
There
It
you go.
was it's five. It's been about 5 years now.
Gotcha.
But I went to a bar here in Dayton because an acquaintance was trying to revive their trivia night, and it
Yeah.
was old school pencil and paper. And despite all of my, hey, if you could use the Crowdpurr, there's this, we've got X, Y, and Z. We compile everything. She went with the pen and paper, and it was terrible. I had a terrible time. I just,
Yeah.
I understand the value of it, and I understand the limitations of the places that do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, once you get the feel for it and you use it
Sure.
one time,
Yeah.
it changes everything.
It does. It is I use sort of a hybrid method. I
Mhm.
definitely do one crowd per round at every location that I have, and I'm up to about I think 33 locations right now. So we're using crowd per every week to capture everyone's information and to sort of break up our paper and pen game. And I've mentioned that to you before.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm also diving into the Crowdpurr library and taking some of your content and sort of making it like repurposing some of it for like I'll take half of the questions from your round and come up with another half, for example. Or I
Right.
might just take a category you have and go, I really like that category. I wouldn't have thought of that and try and come up with my own.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
but
kind of surprised that it was only very recently that you and I started to sort of have overlap in the
yeah.
games that you were using
Oh,
for the
yeah, yeah.
podcast.
Sure.
It had been going for quite a while. I should say, I do want to say, I wanted to say this earlier, that Ryan Buds and the Trivia with Buds podcast has been our North Star here at
Oh,
Crowdpurr as far as like just the podcast. Your podcast inspired Ross to create our podcast.
oh, that's good to hear. Thanks,
And
man.
you as an admin and a user of Crowdpurr are sort of the like I said, the shining star that we look to. As an example, we have a picture of you from Sharknado in
Oh, nice.
hanging up on our office wall.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad to hear that. I'm a big fan of when it's sort of like if you are starting at a new school or you're starting a new school year and you see somebody really cool on the playground in third grade and you're like, I got to be
Mhm.
friends with that kid because I see
Yeah.
potential for that to be something that's going to be awesome for years to come. Exact when I found Crowdpurr and I looked up who made this and I saw Ross. I'm like, Ross is like my age. Ross loves wrestling. Ross lives in LA. We have kids about the same age. I'm like, I should be friends with this guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to let this guy know who I am, and I think he needs to know who I need to know who he is a little bit more.
Mhm.
And that was a big thing I did early on in Crowdpurr. I was like, I need to make this a relationship, and it's been awesome ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. But it was one of those moments in my life where I remember telling my wife, I go, look at this company and look at this website. I go, this is the guy who made it. I remember showing her his picture. I go, I'm gonna be friends with this guy. And she goes, oh, okay. I go, he's based out of Covina, which is where my in-laws, her parents live to this
Uh-huh.
day. And I go, isn't that weird too? So it was random. And then we moved across country at the same time too. He moved to Ohio and I moved to Tennessee right around the same time. So a
Right.
lot of similarities there. Um,
Yeah.
and
I feel like the
yeah,
three of us are like kind of points of a triangle almost.
yeah, isn't that crazy? We're all over
Yeah.
the place. And you said Central Illinois. What town in Illinois were you in specifically?
Well, I came here from Washington. My family is in Central Illinois, or
That's right.
my mom is the last remaining member of my family in Illinois. My father and brother have passed,
Gotcha.
but she lives in Decatur,
Yeah,
which
Decatur. My wife and
I
I met in Macomb, Illinois at Western Illinois
oh
University.
nice.
And I knew a lot of people that went to Western that were from Decatur. So
I only know Decatur from the Ferris Bueller quote when he says, "Is your mom home?" And he says, "No, she's in Decatur.
yeah.
Unfortunately, she's not staying." And that's literally my only connection to Decatur before family moved there.
I'm getting very excited to show my kids Ferris Bueller. We've just watched Back to the Future. We've
Oh, very
watched
cool.
Teen Wolf. We've watched a lot of Michael J. Fox stuff lately. All the Karate Kids, and so now we're
Nice.
kind of moving down that pipeline of
How
80s.
old are your kids?
They're 10 and 7, so you got to be
Okay.
careful, especially like
Sure.
even Teen
Right.
Wolf. Like there's a scene where they're like playing 7 minutes in heaven in a closet, and they're like, why is he in the closet with this
Yeah.
girl? And I had to try to explain
My
that, and
my daughter
also then a
just
werewolf context, you know?
oh for sure. My daughter just turned 13
Uh-huh.
last month. So we're getting to the age now where I feel more comfortable showing her, more R-rated things and more of a adult type stuff
Sure.
that I didn't seem to have any sort of um,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was
Well,
no parental control
we
when I was a kid. It was just I'm the youngest of three,
yeah.
so especially by the time they got to me, I was
Sure.
watching, and we had HBO on our cable when I was 7 years old, so I was
Yeah.
watching, you know, Predator
Yeah.
at age 10, and I would never let my daughter watch that now, but
Yeah. Oh
I'm
man.
stoked that she has on her own completely discovered Wes Anderson movies, and Wes
Oh, that's
Anderson is
cool.
now her favorite filmmaker. And
That's so cool. She likes the quirkiness and the
yeah,
nature of those
so
films.
I love those movies too. So now it's part of it's like, I'm not going to take credit for it, but
Yeah.
I have been a profound influence for 13 years, so it can't be completely devoid of my influence.
That's fantastic. On a less artsy level, I just showed my kids the movie Daddy's Home with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg.
Uh-huh.
And I just thought, I remember seeing it and going, I think they'll think there's some really funny, silly stuff in this movie. And there was, and they laughed a lot, but there's like a whole subplot of like Will Ferrell not being able to have kids and him and
Uh-huh.
his wife want to, and he's the new stepdad. And Mark Wahlberg's like this perfect specimen that gave her two kids and he's like this Adonis or whatever.
Sure.
So there's lots of sex jokes that my daughter, who's 10, when she thinks something is really funny, she laughs really hard and she runs out of the room.
Uh-huh.
Like because she's laughing so hard. So this
Sure.
movie, she was constantly just running out of the room, giggling, which was really funny. But the biggest laugh I've heard her have in a long time was Will Ferrell getting checked out by a fertility doctor. And he goes, Mark Wahlberg, get in here, show him what, your testicles are supposed to look like or whatever. And he drops his pants and it's like this like glowing noise of
Sure.
what he's revealed. And Will Ferrell's, it's a close up in his face and he just says James and the Giant Peach. And because my daughter knows that book and that movie and she got the joke about that being his balls, she laughed like the hardest I've ever seen her laugh. And she's 10 years old,
Yeah,
but it was very cool to see her get a joke and get the reference and
absolutely.
and so even a movie as silly as Daddy's Home, I'm like, this is what it's all about. When you're a
Yeah.
parent, you get to see these moments. And now she like showing her all these 80s movies. She's asking me a lot about 80s movies. And I'm like, I got to show her Airplane. And then I'm like, oh, that
Oh,
was before
yeah.
there was like any kind of rating system, really. So I'm like,
Sure.
I'm like, is there
They could
nudity
put
in Airplane? And like,
nudity in PG movies.
oh, yeah, there's just all kinds of stuff. So you got to pick and choose a little bit. You might have to fast forward
Absolutely.
sometimes, but it is kind of a fun part of
Yeah.
parenting that I thought I would have a lot earlier on, which I did with Disney movies and things. But
Hmm.
I like thought that would go away, and now I'm entering like this new phase of like, oh, these are movies like that I can actually really enjoy and not just pretend to enjoy sometimes when they're
Right.
animated or a kids movie that I'm just not interested in. Um, I can really enjoy some of these classics with her, which is cool, or with them, with both my
Yeah.
kids.
My
Yeah,
parents took me to see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom
is that right?
on opening night when I
Oh
was
wow!
7 years old.
Oh my gosh!
So, a 7 year old, I got to watch a man get his still beating heart ripped out of his chest,
Oh yeah.
held up in front of his face. And that movie actually, here's a little trivia fact for you. That movie inspired the creation of the PG-13 rating
I think I've
because
heard that before.
it
Yeah. And I
was
was just
not,
telling
did
my
not
kids
exist
some sort of
anymore.
paraphrased version of what you just said. I was just telling them the other day about that very, very movie. Yeah, that was what, 1984?
1984. Yeah, we
Yeah,
went. It opened my last day of first grade. It's one of my first.
wow.
It's like that's one of those like core memories
Sure.
from Inside Out. One of the core memories is
Yeah.
my first real movie memory is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom on opening night, the last day of first
Awesome.
grade.
That's very, very cool. I can't think of the first movie. I can tell you, I can freakishly tell you every movie I've ever seen in theaters and who I saw it with.
Oh.
And I could tell you if it was mentioned around me, like we're going, like my parents going to see a movie. I could tell you every
Hmm.
movie in my adult life or my life that my parents saw in theaters, and like weird stuff like that. I don't know why I associate
Yeah.
really strong memories to movies and who you're going with, but I don't remember what my very first movie in theaters was. Like you just mentioned, I remember seeing Back to the Future 3, which was that 1989,
I believe
90?
so. Yes, I remember going to see that in the theater too. I want to say
I was
'89.
If it was
Yeah.
89, I was 4. So that was pretty early to remember a movie. That is definitely one of my earliest, but I don't know if that was the earliest. But
Yeah.
um,
I have hazy memories of Return of the Jedi
okay, yeah.
and apparently being scared at Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I
Okay,
don't
yeah.
remember that, but those are the funny like, oh, look at baby Philip, being scared at these movies.
Look at this
Uh,
baby we brought into the theater to
right.
see this.
Look at the baby that we brought in who's scared of the giant lizard or the bugs that crawl in your ear.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine that. And then, but apparently, of course, no one had any way of knowing that we were going to see a man whose heart was ripped out of his chest.
How about it?
So they had no way of knowing that that was going to happen. But that's my first concrete memory. I still have a jar of movie ticket stubs for every movie that I saw between 1993 and 1999.
Wow. That's really
And
cool. That was the prime movie going years for me as well, because we
oh
lived
yeah,
walking distance from a theater in my hometown, and
hmm
my friend lived right down the street. So we'd
so
go
did
to his
we.
house, walk down the street, like $4 or $5, and you could see
Yeah.
everything. There were a lot of movies that were like not theater worthy that I remember seeing, like
Uh
I think it was 96 or 7. It was like Battlefield Earth,
huh. Yeah.
Entrapment with Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones,
Sure.
Spice World. I remember seeing Spice World in theaters. Like
Me
there's
too.
movies when I think back now, I'm like, no one should see any of those movies in theaters. Those
Right,
are rental
wasn't
at
it
home movies, you know?
wasn't it glorious that we got movies in the theater like that?
Yeah, that is
We don't
true.
get those
Yeah.
anymore.
Oh
Like
yeah, my kids have
even
been. I bet
even
you
the
my kids have been to a movie theater in their 10 and 7-year-old lives like less than 15 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the terrible movies like Spice World and
Yeah.
other ones that you've mentioned, like I would kill to have
Yeah.
theatrically released movies again, like we used to.
Hmm.
Then you could
Sure.
just open up the paper and point, and there was a
Yeah.
movie that you wanted to see, or
Yeah.
that you were at least like okay with seeing.
My parents, yeah, they used to just go on a date and go, let's go see what's out. They wouldn't even
Yep.
look it up. You would get
Yeah.
to the theater and then look at the board and go, I guess we'll pick one of those, you know?
Right. I used to do that with friends in high school.
Yeah.
We moved to my family moved to Utah when I was in high school, my
Yeah.
junior year. So 16 years old, prime movie going time. And it was the first time I grew up in a town with one single screen movie theater and
Yeah.
then one 3-screen movie theater.
Okay.
So we had 4 total movies to choose from my entire life. And I thought that was just normal.
Sure.
And then we moved to Utah and there were like 10 screen theaters. And then we eventually got like a 14 screen theater.
Yeah.
So you were able to just be like, I'm going to go to the mall
Uh-huh.
and look and see what's starting in the next 20 to 30 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Like Robert Forster and Jackie Brown, you know,
Yeah.
what looks good and what's starting on, you know, just what's starting right now. Just
Yeah.
be able to go and watch something. I miss that. I really do miss that.
It was a magical time for sure.
Yeah.
Tell me this, were you ever a trivia player yourself when I know you were bartending, you were seeing trivia nights maybe happening.
Oh,
Did
absolutely.
you ever go to
Absolutely.
trivia nights and win and play and things like
I
that?
did. Yeah. There was a while in Seattle, there was a restaurant called the Wild Ginger that
Okay.
had a bar and performance space. So you could go and see shows at the Triple Door, but then the bar, you could just go and get a drink. And every Monday night they did trivia.
Hmm.
And the restaurant where I worked at the time was just up the street. And I got off early on Monday nights. I was the opener. So I was usually done by 8 or 9. Trivia started around that time. So I would just book it down there. Sometimes coworkers would come with me, and sometimes I would just play by myself.
Yeah.
And I always loved that. You know, you could ask anybody in my family that one Christmas they got me a Trivial Pursuit edition, like a pop culture Trivial Pursuit, and I challenged my entire family to play me versus them. I cleared the board before any of them got a pie piece, and that was the
Wow.
last time my family decided to play Trivial Pursuit with me.
I
But
was
I
going to
used
say,
to.
had you ever won by yourself? Did you ever have the glory when you were at a
I think the
bar?
closest by myself was a 3rd place victory. But
Okay.
you know, I'm competing against teams that had 6, 7 players on them,
Yeah. I
and
won by
so
myself one time, and I've only played trivia nights, which is crazy because I've hosted without exaggerating about 10,000 of them.
uh-huh.
And I've only played probably less than 15 ever, like
Oh
gone out,
wow.
like I'm going to play trivia. And before I started hosting, I had never done it.
Yeah.
And then randomly players will invite me to play at another place. Or when I first moved to Tennessee, I was getting the lay of the land. And I would go out and kind of see like, all right, what's this trivia night like? And what can I make it to be different and things like that. And
Yeah.
so there was a place called Aubrey's that still runs a show. And I won one time by default because it was a points wagering situation where like the first
Uh-huh.
and second place teams lost it all and I happened to get it. So like I moved into first place and won. And I was like, I'm the smartest man in the world. Like I was like, this is the smartest you can ever feel. And I had like a
Absolutely.
$25, maybe a $50 gift card. I'm like, I'm taking my family out to dinner here. And
Yeah.
so it was weird being on that other end of it after so many times just giving away those kinds of prizes because I'm like, oh, this really does mean something that I never really considered. I'm like, it's just a night out. People like to do it. It's a
Mhm.
routine. And, you know, there's this little, you get a little bit of endorphins building up when you get like something right or you know something. Um,
100%.
but yeah, actually winning is like a whole thing. And I'm not an insanely competitive person, but I did feel like glory
Right.
that night, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It
Yeah.
feels good.
Yeah.
It feels really good. Yeah. I never won by myself. We would frequently come in first place when I would convince some of my coworkers to go with me.
Yeah.
Many hands make small work.
Sure.
But I was also sort of, for lack of a better term, dictatorial about what answer would go on that paper.
Sure.
So
I see teams doing that all the time.
Even
There's
if
like the official person who writes it down and stuff. Yeah.
even if 6 people were telling me Tom Hanks, if I
Yeah.
had it in my mind that it was Tom Cruise,
Yeah.
Tom Cruise was going on that paper. I'll take full responsibility if it's wrong, but
Yeah.
that was just how that was my, this was 20 years ago. I've calmed down a bit since then, but
Yeah.
that was my team style. Was we're still playing this by myself.
Yeah.
I'll split the winnings with you guys, but I got this under control.
That's fantastic.
My proudest moment in that run of going to the trivia nights was one of the rounds was multiple answers for each question.
Yeah.
So you could use that round to sort of beef up your score.
Oh, cool.
You could sometimes it could be as little as 2 or 3, but sometimes it was 10 answers. And one of the questions was list all of the cast members of Saturday Night Live.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to list every single, and that was like currently on Saturday, not like who's ever been on the show, but
right.
List the, so this is 2008, 2009, Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, that era. And I was able to list every single cast member. And the host made a mention of it after the round was over that I was the only person who knew all the cast members. So I got all the points.
Oh, it's fantastic. And,
it's a dumb thing, but I still remember that 20 years on. And
sure.
Talk about it like I threw the game-winning touchdown at a high school football game.
Yeah.
I'm Al Bundy in this scenario.
Yeah, it feels that important. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I cut you off earlier when I asked you this, but when you're writing trivia questions week to week, do you ever get assigned, do you assign the categories to you and the other writers, or?
Right. I do. I assign the categories. I brainstorm the topics. We have quite a few recurring topics in our trivia library. We've got the mostly like general trivia games.
The kitchen sink's always, I close out every virtual show I've ever done with the kitchen sink for
that's awesome.
Close to 2,000 shows. Yeah.
Yeah. So every week I tried to have at least one of those general games. You got fun facts, everything bagel, kitchen sink, just a myriad, whatever can be the most random. I try to have at least one of those a week. And I personally love to write those games.
Yeah.
Because it's, 15 random things that I get to look up or 15 random things that I know that I've never asked about before, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So, we try to do that. And then there are certain pop culture topics like Billboard hits of the 90s that 15 questions are not going to be nearly enough to encompass the breadth of information from just music of the 90s.
Yeah.
So we do recurring those, different movie games. But we also try to, I sometimes it's unfortunate that sometimes the more refined the topic is, the less it gets cloned and the less it gets used, just because it's so specific. Yeah, and I'm sure that you've noticed that as a admin and as a host, that people respond to more variety.
Yeah. I mean,
it makes for a better show.
I personally, as a player, love a category like 80s martial arts movies, but I could never use it for a corporate event where people are, sometimes they even request, they're like, can you make these categories very broad? We have people from all over the world, global audience. Some people maybe don't speak English that well. They're like, can you do the more popular stuff? I got
a request a couple weeks ago for a Wicked game. Oh, which I wouldn't have thought to write myself because, like I said, it's a specific, one single specific topic.
Yeah.
Typically tends to, you might produce one or two questions that are really great, but once you start really digging into the weeds of a thing, you're getting only the diehard fans are going to really want to play that.
Yep.
But, it's a book, it's a Broadway musical, it's a movie.
Yeah.
Ariana Grande, you could just ask a question about her, so there's enough material
adjacent things. Yeah.
So, occasionally we get these requests. I try to honor them as much as I possibly can. They don't come in too often. So when they do, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Anytime a celebrity dies, at least a celebrity that's got a large catalog of things.
Yeah.
We tried to do a tribute game.
Yep.
You know, you asked me
I just used your Jimmy Carter tribute questions for a podcast for a
oh,
Patreon subscriber who requested Jimmy Carter tribute questions. So I was
can
like,
I tell you a funny story about that Jimmy Carter tribute game?
sure.
So, uh, my father passed away in February of 2023,
Okay.
and Jimmy Carter went into hospice care the following week.
Okay.
I remember this because 2 days after my dad died, Raquel Welch also died.
Got
And
it.
we did a Raquel Welch trivia tribute.
Mm-hmm.
And I assigned, because, and then 2 days after that, Jimmy Carter goes into hospice. And historically speaking, people don't spend a lot of time in hospice care.
Yeah.
So we wrote that Jimmy Carter trivia game the day he went into hospice care.
Oh, wow.
And I I took 2 weeks off at the end of the year last year. I was over Christmas break. Jokingly said to Ross over the break, I will try to be as close to my computer as possible on the off chance that Jimmy Carter passes away over this break so we can get that game out.
Yeah.
And then we were able to publish it over the holiday break because he died. But so we sat on that game for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
But it was just sitting in the ready to publish, just waiting for him to pass on. And, there were no new things to ask about in the last 2 years because he was in hospice care the whole time.
Sure.
But, the country singer, Toby Keith, when
Yeah.
Toby Keith died,
Yep.
I wouldn't think to do a game. I'm not a huge Toby Keith fan.
Yeah.
But Ross mentioned, hey, Toby Keith is very popular.
Yeah.
And here's a good thing for the question you asked earlier. Are there topics that I kind of sort of not detest or cringe at? I wasn't that excited to write a Toby Keith game, but within 10 minutes of doing research on him, I found just an insane amount of information.
Sure.
And was able to put that game together relatively quickly and learned a lot. And then it became a very, very popular game on our social media.
Sure. And then you, as a consumer of just pop culture, now you can talk freely about Toby Keith with facts that pop in your head from preparing those questions.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
That's my favorite. Ultimately, my favorite part of this job is that I'm just learning insane, silly stuff that I have, my daughter, you can hear her eyes rolling into the back of her head when I say this stuff, but it feeds right into dad because I get to be the dad who's like, well, did you know that so-and-so? And, but I love it. So I get to learn new things every single day. Every single day of my job is educational.
And I like how you frame that with starting as a bartender, having to know about all these different topics and not being a trivia host or a trivia writer, but being able to speak and kind of talk on all these different things that people were bringing to you. Now you're bringing all those different things with small amounts of research to trivia hosts and trivia players all around the country. So I think that's a very cool framework. I love that. I love that. I love that. Speaking of learning, we'll end this special episode here with some things you might have learned recently. Do you have any nuggets of information that you want to maybe share with listeners of mine? Maybe something tech savvy, maybe something about Crowdpurr that people don't know. I'll kick it off with, I am using my iPhone as a webcam right now, instead of the webcam that's built into my MacBook, because I just read that you can wirelessly use your iPhone as a webcam if you have a Mac computer, and it's much clearer and crisper than obviously the ones that are built in to computers, which I don't understand why webcams, they always say, oh yeah, the quality's not great on a webcam. I'm like, we're using is webcams these days. Why isn't it the best? Why isn't that lens on my iPhone in my MacBook computer? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But if you ever wanted to be able to use it, you just have to put a setting on in your iPhone that allows your phone to be recognized by your MacBook when it's close to it, and like using it right now, and I see a huge difference in the quality. So that's my little tech tip for today as a host or as a person who has to do these kinds of conversations quite often. Do you have anything that you want to maybe share like that?
Well, I will share this little tidbit about me. I am one of the least tech savvy people you might encounter.
Okay.
So the fact that Ross has set this whole Crowdpurr up so wonderfully and easy to use makes my job easier because I don't have to know the tech things. I get excited when I learn a new keyboard shortcut for Windows. I
Yeah.
if I'm like, or when I'm editing the podcast and I know that if I hit, Shift Command T, it'll highlight all the tracks in a single line in Adobe Audition. Those things are exciting to me.
Sure.
So that's probably the best. I know if you're using Crowdpurr, anybody who wants to use it, if you press the Y key during a game, it will show fireworks on the screen for other users. And in the few times that I have hosted live trivia, that's always been a very excited. People sort of get really excited when they see that.
Big fan of using those, especially when I do the top 3 trophy reveals at a live trivia night or a virtual show. All right, let's see who was in third, second. And then when I get to first, I just jam on that Y key and all the fireworks and confetti go off and people get excited to see that.
Here's one thing that I did learn recently that is not tech related, but I do want to share it because Ichiro Suzuki is recently elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Greatest leadoff hitter in baseball history, in my opinion. But I'm also a diehard Mariners fan, true to the blue until I die. I learned that after his 10th at bat, his batting average never dropped below 300 for the entire rest of his career.
Wow.
And that is an insane statistic.
Sure.
And the reason that he got into the Hall of Fame with 99.7% of the vote.
Oh my God.
There's my trivia tidbit for everybody for the day.
I love that. We learned some fireworks. We learned some baseball stuff. That is fantastic. Philip, tell people where they can find you on maybe Instagram. Tell us about how they can sign up for Crowdpurr, etc.
Oh, Crowdpurr is super easy. You just go to crowdpurr.com and you can sign up. If you go to app.crowdpurr, that's the actual site for the admins to use the trivia games. You can create an account for free and run your own trivia games. You can find me and listen to me weekly on Trivia Night by Crowdpurr, which is the name of my podcast. Just go to podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and Google Crowdpurr. It'll come right up. My Instagram handle personally is WonderBeard, like Wonder Bread, but beard. And that's my only social media. I don't do Facebook or TikTok or Twitter anymore. Sort of weaned everything down a little bit a couple years ago for my own mental health. And that's been really great. Crowdpurr has you can find Crowdpurr everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, wherever there's social media to be had, we will be there. So that's where you can find Crowdpurr.
And Crowdpurr, we should mention, totally free to sign up. So you can
absolutely free. You can
sample quizzes. Yeah. You don't have as many features as the higher tiers, but great way to kind of check it out. You get access to the whole trivia library right away. And you can kind of go, ooh, I want to move up to the classroom plan or the seminar plan or the conference plan based on your needs of the service. And I have the highest tier, and it's my be all end all, like I've mentioned many times, solution to all trivia hosting things. Yeah. So I love being able to customize every element and every part of it, and always excited to bug Ross for teasers on upcoming features and things like that. So
it doesn't even need to be, you don't even need to do it to host a trivia game. You can do this in a meeting. You could do this at your house with your
collect survey results and things like that. There's lots of chances to use it for lots of different
I used it a couple weeks ago at my daughter's birthday party because she wanted a Wes Anderson trivia game for her birthday party. You can use it in all manner of ways.
Very cool. Well, Philip Trickey, thank you so much for being a bud.
Ryan Butts, thank you so much for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Me as well. And I will jump in your Instagram inbox, I'm sure, very soon to bug you about something. So
I love it. I love to see it when your name pops up, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, you as well. I'll talk to you later.
All right.